I'm going to show you how to solve a quadratic using the formula broken down into a series of steps today. So what we're doing is solving a quadratic equation that looks like this. I've got 2x squared minus 10x plus 12 is equal to 0. Step 1, identify A, B, and C. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take that quadratic equation. Again, it's 2x squared minus 10x plus 12. And I'm going to identify this is A is equal to 2. B is equal to negative 10. Notice that's being subtracted, so B is negative 10. And C is equal to 12. Second step, write the formula. Now, you don't need to at this point memorize it, but I want you to write it down each time. So the quadratic formula is that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. The third step, write formula shell. What do I mean by shell? A shell is an empty container. I'm going to copy the formula. However, I'm going to replace each letter with a pair of open brackets. Negative, that'll be b, plus or minus the square root of, again, this will be b. This is that b. It's squared, because that's squared, minus 4, that'll be A, and that'll be C, all over 2A. Now after you've written out the shell of the formula, double check to make sure that you have containing brackets to replace each of the letters there. Make sure there are 2 of them here. Make sure there's a negative before this one. Fill the shells, I should say, with numbers. Okay, I've got A, B, and C. This shell and this one need the value of B. B is negative 10. This is where we've got to be really careful. B is negative 10, so a negative 10 goes here. Notice there are 2 negatives. There's always a negative in front of that first B. And if B itself happens to be negative, we put a negative in there. So we got 2 of them. Again, B is negative 10. Minus 4 times A. A is 2. And C is 12. All over 2A, again, where A is 2. Step 5. BEDMAS. That's the order of math operations. We do brackets, exponents, then we do division and multiplication, and finally addition and subtraction. What's a bit tricky here is the top line counts as a bracket, and the square rooting actually counts as an exponent. So my next line, instead of going from left to right, we're going to do this from the inside out. You'll see as we go. If there's a negative here, we'll deal with it first. We have a negative 10. So negative turns you backwards, and another negative turns you forwards again. So negative 10 is 10. We have 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared. Negative 10 times negative 10 is positive 100. See, the first thing I'm putting is negative 10 squared. Negative 10 squared is negative 10 times negative 10. 10 times 10 is 100, and a negative times a negative is a positive, so this is positive 100. So negative 10 squared is 100. Minus 4 times 2 times 12. See this? These three are being multiplied together. So on a separate sheet I can figure out that. I've got 4 times 2 times 12. Well, 4 times 2 is 8. So I really have 8 times 12. And 8 times 12, well, 8 times 10 is 90, and 8 times 2 is 16. So 8 times 12 is 96. If need be, for these questions, maybe have a multiplication table in front of you so you can look it up. Get a table that goes up to 20 by 20. 8 times 12 is 96. So 4 times 2 times 12 is 8 times 12, which is 96. So 4 times 2 times 12 is 96. And all that is divided by 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So notice, we did the multiplication here, we did this exponent, and we multiplied this negative by this negative. Also, we multiplied the two numbers at the bottom together. Now I'm going to work on these two numbers. So I've got x is equal to 10, it's now positive 10, plus or minus the square root of 100 minus 96. 100 minus 96 is 4. All over 4. So I just copied the line above, except I did the math for these numbers inside the square root sign. Now, the square root of 4 is 2. So x is 10 plus or minus 2 all over 4. Now what does this mean? This plus or minus, that's a bit weird. It means we actually have two answers. In one case we're adding, so x is 10 plus 2 over 4. And in the other case, we're subtracting. X is 10 minus 2 over 4. 10 plus 2 is 12. 10 minus 2 is 8. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So our two answers are x equals 3 and x equals 2. So I'm going to recap. Step 1, identify A, B, and C. Those are the first numbers there when the quadratic equation's in order like this. A is 2, B is negative 10, C is 12. Write the formula. With plenty of paper and plenty of space, right below that, I want you to write out the formula as it is. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Write the formula shell. Remember, before I had these numbers in here, I wrote out that empty shell. It should always look like this. Write out the empty shell and make sure you have a round bracket to replace each of those letters. Fill the shells with the numbers. So remember, you have, at this point, identified A, B, and C, you write them in their appropriate spot by reading the formula. B goes here and here. A goes here and here. And C goes right there. Then finally, we apply BEDMAS. Brackets, exponents, and that includes, we include that as an exponent. When you learn about exponent rules, you'll see that the exponent of 1/2 is actually a square root. Division, multiplication, and then addition, subtraction. One thing to watch for is when we have a situation like this, 10 plus 2 divided by 4, I actually did the addition first, not the division. 10 plus 2 is 12. The reason for that is when we see something written like this, it's as if there are brackets around here. That long division sign, I don't mean long division, I mean this extended line between the fractions, or line inside the fraction, counts as a bracket up here. So here I would do 10 minus 2 first and then divide by 4. I'm now going to go through all those steps a little bit quicker, and I'm going to do an example that would require a calculator because the square root is not going to be as simple. So I'm going to do 2x squared plus 5x minus 13 is equal to 0. Okay. Step 1, ABC. Step 2, write the formula. Step 3, write the formula shell. Step 4, fill the shell with the numbers. So remember, this is B, and B is 5. So I have a 5 here and here. This is A is 2. This is C is negative 13. And A is 2. Finally, we're going to apply BEDMAS. So 5 is positive here, negative 5, that just stays as negative 5. Remember in the last example, it was a negative in there and it became a positive because we had 2 negatives. Over here, I want to do 5 squared. 4 minus 4 times 2 times negative 13. Now, I've got 2 negatives that are being multiplied together. It's going to become a positive. 4 times 2 times 13 is 104. And then 2 times 2 is 4. Just be careful with your positives and negatives. I have negative b, and b is positive, so it comes out negative. B is positive, and everything squared is positive, so my b squared is my 5 squared is 25. This part's a bit tricky. Minus 4ac. C is negative 13. So when I subtract a negative, it becomes positive. A positive 4 times 2 times 13 goes here. And then on the bottom, 2 times 2 is 4. I'm going to go ahead and add these two. So I've got 104 plus 25 is 129. All divided by 4. I now need the square root of 129. If the number's not a perfect square, you want to use a calculator. There's like each Newton's method or whatever, but for now, just use a calculator. So 129, and its square root is 11.36. So I have plus or minus 11.36 all over 4. So it breaks into 2. And I'm going to use a calculator because of these decimals. I'll deal with the top first. So I've got -5 plus 11.36 is 6.36. Over 4. Or I've got -5 minus 11.36, which gives me -16.36 all over 4. So I have 1.59 or -4.09. Again, the same steps. Whenever you see one of these, identify A, B, and C. A is the number multiplied by x squared. B is the number multiplied by x. It's a negative in this case. C is that last number on the end. Write down the formula. Okay, just take the minute and write out the formula exactly as it is. Write a formula shell. If you write out a formula shell, this will help you get all of the numbers into the right spot. Write out a shell. Fill the shell with the numbers. So very carefully, take your A, B, and C and put them in all their appropriate spots in the shell. And then finally, apply BEDMAS. Brackets, exponents, that includes square roots, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. But remember, when you get towards the end, if you have a number plus another number divided by a number, this line implies, that is, this line makes it as if you have brackets here. You do the addition first before the division in this case.